Okay, I am here with my good friend, Tim Morris.
Howdy.
I'll introduce him in a second, but I want to sort of give the framework for this video that we're making today. This is part of the Leader 101 course with LK10, and this is lesson 8 on coaching. So the larger picture is Leader 101. It's cultivating habits of highly effective spiritual leaders. And lesson 7 was the habit of becoming radical attention payers.
Yes.
And that really, we're going to talk about that. That flows out of the idea of prevenience, that God's already at work ahead of time. Our job is to pay close attention to that. That was lesson 7. So lesson 8 on coaching is the perfect follow-up of that. But first I want to introduce Tim. Tim and I have been friends for about 12 years. I first met him when he was first starting seminary, Denver Seminary. And we've had a lot of fun together over these years. He's played an important role in LK10. So, Tim, first of all, share just a little bit about yourself, Britt, and your business/ministry that you're involved with.
Yes, my ministry. So I have known John a while back, and John had some influence on me early on to help me discover my design. And one of the things I discovered in it was I was highly creative and I was a coach. And so in this last season, I've been focusing more as a professional coach and picking up clients, and I've redone the design discovery system over and over, and so I'll be offering group versions of that, and I take people through that one-on-one, and I also coach them to get to where their heart wants to get with their life, and I love it. Brittany, my wife, is a trained counselor from Denver Seminary as well, and she's also getting into coaching herself, and she's probably one of the best counselors I've ever met.
She is good. I agree.
She's phenomenal. And we have a little one coming along, so we're excited for that too.
What is design discovery?
Good question. So it's a process to help people understand their heart's desires in a framework. And so the framework I have right now is called, you name your superpowers, your tools you use, the setting you come alive in, the fruit you produce, and the people you are called to work with.
It's important stuff. I agree. So let's start with the idea of what is coaching. People hear that word coach, they think about who's the current coach of the Denver Broncos, Gary Kubiak. That's coach.
Yeah.
But we mean it in a somewhat different definition. So let's talk about what is coaching and kind of what are the assumptions of coaching.
So you were bringing up sports coaching, which is referencing there's one person interacting with a bunch of people, often in a one-on-one context, but not always. In the context we're using here, a coach it's a one-on-one relationship where one person is listening very intently and intuitively to a person, and they're using powerful questions, powerful observations, and they're using all the abilities they have when they're listening to help them get on the path that their heart is actually asking them to go towards. And also where God's taking them to, so the two sort of coalesce, that your heart's desires are where God's taking you almost always. And so a coach is very tuned in to where a person's at. They're paying attention to emotions. They're paying attention to everything that they bring to the table. And so the coach asks questions to help them get where they're wanting to get. But the key with coaching is the client has the agenda. It's different from consulting in that a consultant has experience and brings their experience and does more of what we would say as advice or telling. A coach is more to help the person discover what's already in them. So all those skill sets I mentioned earlier help them draw that out.
Right. So to differentiate coaching from a couple of other things, one other word is facilitating, and that actually is going to be lesson 9. This will be the next lesson. We think of facilitating as great listening with groups, whereas coaching is great listening with individuals. And then another distinction is the word mentoring. So sometimes we distinguish between mentoring and coaching. You were sort of talking about that. You remember that little picture we had about mentoring being like pouring into a bucket? Remember that one?
Somewhat.
I'll help you. So mentoring is like pouring into somebody. I have things you need to know, and so
similar
I
to
teach
consulting
you.
in that way.
And then coaching. Remember the idea of a coaching has to do with an acorn?
Yeah.
Talk about that if you remember that.
It's developing the acorn. Is that what you're?
Well, it's the idea that this little teeny acorn is filled with potential.
Oh, yeah.
It's got a whole oak tree right inside this little thing.
Yeah, the answers are in the person.
Exactly.
So, and you know, this is, mentors have experience. They come with an experience. But the key always with coaching is that the client knows best. Mm-hmm. And the other assumption behind that is that they know what God's telling them more than I do, more often than not. But my job as a coach is also to listen to the Spirit while I'm coaching. So really it's to guide them towards where their heart's telling them to go. Mm-hmm. There are coaches that have expertise. I coach artists who are wanting to make an income. That's one of the niches I use. I have experience in that, but I have to be cautious at times because I have that experience. But I can ask powerful questions around that too. So there's a little bit of a mix and a blend, but the key value is that the International Coaching Federation calls it the client is creative, whole, and resourceful. Mm. And that the assumption of that means that I need to help you find that in yourself instead of me telling you how to do it.
Yep.
So those three assumptions within the ICF are really important.
So another distinction we want to make here is a person could be involved in coaching on a professional level. You might hire a coach. Some people watching this might actually decide they want to become professional coaches. But for the sake of what we're talking about here, it's not a professional level. We think this is a skill that should be cultivated just for every average Christian, especially for leaders.
Yeah.
So, you want to say a word about that?
Yeah. So the assumption with coaching is that the one thing I love about coaching is that coaching is a skill set that's faithful to how people grow, which people grow one step at a time.
Kind of how God has made us.
Yeah. And almost any time that I've heard a teaching or I've been involved with some kind of training, the ones that are the best for me demonstrate one point. And I walk away going, I have one thing to chew on.
I can remember that.
Yeah. And they taught me that at seminary. When you preach, do one point, and that's called your big idea. Yeah. So I love coaching because it assumes we focus, we grow incrementally, we grow in steps. So in that God is okay with that pace of growth. So as a leader, whether you're professional or not, my assumption is I can't get you beyond where God's taking you, which is one step at a time. If I can get you one step today, for instance, one of the things coaches often do is they'll use a scale, 1 to 10. For instance, if I was to ask someone, how are you doing physically with your health? You might scale it from a 1 to 10. You might say, I'm a 4. Well, my goal isn't to get you to 10 today. Yeah. My goal is to get you to 5. So then I start coaching them, what would bring you to 5? Well, sometimes they make discoveries that launch them out, but my goal as a coach is to just go with them in the moment to 5. So I love that about coaching, that's how we're wired to grow. It's not overwhelming, but it's really fun and liberating. And anyone can do that basic skill set. Yep.
It makes me think of whereas in Romans 8, where it talks about walking in the Spirit.
Yeah.
Well, walking implies one step at a time.
Yeah,
and so if I can help somebody discover the next step that they're supposed to take, that fits with what God's up to.
That's beautiful.
And so again, we want to think about coaching as something going two ways. First of all, I need to be coached. So I want to receive coaching, but then also I want to be skilled in coaching others as a way of love, as a way of serving and of helping them in their process.
Yeah, and I'll share just a word. I'm a professional coach, but I found, and I read this in a book called The Prosperous Coach, which is meant for professionals. But he said, if you're not being coached and you're coaching others, what does that communicate to others about how you actually value it? So I hired my own coach, who's awesome, who has changed my life, and I believe in it just because of what he's done in my life, as well as other people like John has coached me too. So I want to encourage you, if you're going to coach others, if you actually use that as I'm being coached and it's impacting me, they'll actually buy it more, because it does.
Yeah.
So that's one piece of encouragement there.
So part of what we want to do, and we'll we'll end this recording here in just a second because the next recording is going to talk more about the practical steps. You know, what are some basic steps that all of us can take, not on professional level, but just as leaders, because this is what the course is for. What are practical steps that we can learn to begin to do this? But our objective is to see Luke 10 really develop a culture of coaching, so that in every house church, this is a skill that's being used by lots of people across the scope of Luke 10, that we are growing as coaches and learning how to do this. So great start. Again, this one is sort of what is coaching and some of the assumptions, and the next video we'll talk about the how-tos.